You are watching CIO TV by Enterprise IT World, a production of Accent Infomedia.
Three that I would say that, from a technology perspective, what it is more like a technology area perspective, AI ML is something which is definitely going to be helping people who are already at a level of maturity, and it can help them to really take a leap into the next era. The second one is cybersecurity is an area where, again, AI ML can play a bigger role than what we're using it now. And that can really
Hello and welcome. You're watching CIOTV.live. In a series of interviews, we try to understand perspectives of CIOs and IT leaders on various technologies and their strategies for digital transformation. Today on our show, we have with us Prince Joseph, CIO of SFO Technologies. Prince, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Anisha and Shafali. Thank you for having me on the show. And I'm happy to be here.
A quick introduction about Prince. Prince has expertise in enterprise IT, spanning infrastructure, software engineering, business process improvements, digital transformation, ERP, Industry 4.0, smart factory, CRM, business solutions and development, networking, and emerging technologies. And he's the CIO of the Nest Group of Companies, which is a Kochi-based conglomerate with operations in areas like education and training, foods and beverages, commercial, industrial and residential real estate development, besides technology. Prince, can you tell us about the size of the organization of the IT team? Since you have a lot on your plate, the conglomerate has so many different business interests. How big is the IT team, and how are you leveraging the power of IT?
So, like you described, there are many industry verticals that have to be looked after, and not every one of them is the same, and the IT demands of each is also different. So there's also a software division, and they have an IT team that needs internal support, which is fairly smaller. There's manufacturing, where we have a larger workforce, or the largest amount of workforce, which is running into 3,000, 3,500. But the knowledge worker base over here is smaller, because we have a lot of operators and factory workers. We have F&B, which also is low tech, and it varies from industry to industry. So across the board, there is about 180 odd team members that support infrastructure, security, enterprise systems, development, and you name it, field support.
All right. So it's actually quite a large team, 180 strong. Now, with the new corona variant, Omicron, around the corner, what's your preparedness for hybrid work for any kind of eventuality? You said that you have a core IT team, but what about workers on site, be it in your real estate business, foods business, manufacturing business? How are you planning in case of eventualities for any kind of hybrid work?
Right. I mean, when you start looking at any sort of a scenario of this nature, the business impact is what makes you prioritize where do you want to focus your attention, and what does each business do. You got to have an approach which gives the highest value to your crown jewels, so to speak. So for me, it was manufacturing is where our flagship is, our cash cow is. Software is our second most important one. But the hybrid work impact was more felt in these two areas. The other ones, I don't think they're yet fully out of the whole COVID impact. Real estate has really gone slow. The demand for any new IT service there has been slow. F&B has also gone slow. Right now, there's a small pickup. But then our investment into those areas was also not that high. But manufacturing and the software side, it was one of those two areas where, where you actually see huge contrast. Software, you could actually continue to work from day one because you were more or less geared up to it. We were servicing a lot of international customers. That meant that you were already working remotely for customers in an offshore base. So the development team or the testing team, they could actually move home and continue to remotely be able to function. The only element that we had to bring in there was the element or the layers of security, because the demand for ensuring that data handling, sensitive data management is actually done to the standards, and this does not introduce a new threat vector or risk that had to be handled and confidently done. So software was an easier navigation because all of those team members were also tech savvy, and they were able to move on to using quickly to tools like, whether we say we have to have multi-factor authentication, they're able to get onto it. Right? We need to start using virtual desktop infrastructure. They were able to move on to that. We have to use VPNs, and they were already using that to some extent. Only thing is now it has become mainstay. Manufacturing was a different one because the challenge here was while the support functions and the corporate offices can work, your plants is where the work happens. Your production is there. And no production was happening because none of the operators or the factory workers were able to come in there. So the output was directly proportional to the number of people coming into the factory every day. So that is not a problem that technology could easily solve because we were not really geared up for that at all. And we were in pain for several months. So this is the time we started to think about how do we now remove this dependency of people or reduce the dependency of people. You cannot remove the dependency. How do you reduce the dependency on people on production? And that's where small tinkering, small helps, because while you will not have a scenario where 100% of the people are not going to come, but if 20% comes, directly meant 20%-ish production was impacted earlier. But now we are able to introduce certain measures that optimize the processes, introduce certain automations in the robotic sides, in the mechanical side, in the process side to say, well, if 20% people still do not come, we are still able to maintain our target of 100% production. And this is something we are trying to improve as we go forward. So the preparedness for Omicron, I would say, is that, over the last 2 years, the learning has been such that to switch on to hybrid work, and most or a good part of the organization is still following that mode. We are I would say ready. The only thing is I would not be that cocky to say we are ready and we are fully prepared, because we don't know what tomorrow is going to bring. So we stay alert. We stay aware of what are the trends, what are the tools that we can use. And we have a program where we are trying to leverage quite a number of those to see how it can be quickly bring to production some of those tool sets and solutions. Earlier,
Right.
we used to take our time.
Yeah. So Prince, you said that in your software development business, there are not really a lot of outages. It's quite smooth since you've already been working in a remote fashion. Now, in the manufacturing side, correct me if I heard it wrong. You said that we have bring in automations and to ensure that we get 100% production with 20% lower workforce, or just 20% of the workforce?
20% lower. We can't, we have 3 decades of machinery in our plants. So there are machinery which are 20 years old, which is still functioning. Machinery which we purchased over the last 2 years, which is more advanced, which can do a lot more. But the older machinery still needs to have people
operators
to have people operate. So that is that's a mix in itself.
Could you then tell us what is the level of automation in your manufacturing operations? You're saying you still have your legacy machinery. What is the new equipment that you bought? What kind of automation is available with these machines? Okay. And how many of your processes are automated?
So I'll have to say, even when we say we have a manufacturing factory, we are actually talking about probably 15 factories. And each factory is at a different level of maturity. So there are some which are still legacy. It still needs to operate in that manner. Certain tooling operations, certain mechanical operations, certain fabrication operations, those machines function there. But when you're looking at PCB, electronic components, highly integrated circuit assemblies, there we've been able to get assembly machines, SMT machines, to actually reduce the number of operators required from nearly, unbelievably, from 40 to 60 per line, or sometimes it even goes up to 100, to single digits. Because all the machines are now integrated, the flow between them, imagine previously you had to have a person whose only job was, because it's a high volume line, pick up this board, place it over here, pick up the board, place it over here. I mean, those are small mechanical automations that you can do. But the other part of the intelligent automation that we want to look to work on, and we are trying to follow the Industry 4.0 kind of practices and try to assess where we are on the maturity scale and what we need to do to bring ourselves up. So we applied a lot of those principles to bring in a data analytics and IoT layer, wherein we are now able to not only have the parts of the flow to be automated, but we are also able to now get real-time data. Previously, these were also, there are some factories that we still have where people are writing things down, saying, okay, 5 is the output right now, the last one out. But now in the UPH, in the newer plants, it's on the dashboard. It's on the board for everyone to see, and that's rolled up to a cockpit where even the whole entire factory's performance is viewed.
All right. So, Prince, what you're describing is that, this whole move to Industry 4.0 for digital transformation, it doesn't happen overnight. It happens in, phases and steps. What have been your learnings over the last 2 years? How much more are you looking to automate or, bring in more digital transformation, and which processes? How do you want to go ahead? And do you really want to get everything automated? Because your model is one where you have huge determined element for even manual work. So what is your thought process going ahead?
So the thing is, I think the journey to getting yourself more and more integrated and smart is very real. And for us also, our vision is the factories that we will be building are going to be smart factories. So we are trying to term the new factory that we just opened about 2 months back. We are saying that's the smartest factory that we have, but it can be smarter still. So the one that is being constructed or being designed now has got to go one step ahead in terms of being completely integrated. And some of the terms that we want to throw in is it's not only connected in every sense, it's also conscious. It also helps make decisions on many things, not just on the production side, but environmental side, human side, security side, surveillance side, etc. So for me, it's pretty clear that while we have achieved some major milestones with the last smart factory of ours, or smartest factory of ours, I know I can go 2 levels higher. If we continue on areas that can still be bridged. Right now, we've introduced things like automated guide vehicles. Stock movements inside is going to be done through those robots. Some of the operations are actually done by robotic arms, and the information from every machine, whether it's pick and place or reflow or soldering or AOI or visual inspection, is actually feeding back to seeing a traceability. So we also need to give an endorsement on the fact that some of the boards that we create, it goes into highly sensitive industries, aerospace and defense, healthcare. So how do you ensure that this was done properly in the plant, and every little component inside this is exactly what we claim it is, and we are able to trace it back to the part manufacturer. So this is the kind of information that we need to pack in. So when we are actually shipping it out, we are actually giving this whole validation, saying that what you're getting is exactly what it says on the tin, and we can provide you every evidence that's needed to confirm this.
Great. So there's a large amount of transparency in this. So, Prince, you said that you can set up factories that are even better than what your smart factories are doing now. What I'm trying to understand is there a plan to do so? Is there a willingness to do so? Do you want to do this? If yes, to what extent?
So um, I guess maybe from the technology perspective and the fact that you're trying to do something new, something innovative, that's very interesting from the personal perspective. But I see real benefits for the business, and I see if the plant head who is going to come in is aligned with this sort of a vision, um, we can actually do a lot more stuff in every factory that we're going to be setting up. So story short, the first thing I would try to align with them is how do they view Industry 4.0 standards? How do they view trying to achieve milestones or maturity scale, which is on the higher side, on those principles? Because to me, it's also a selling point to any of our customers. We tell them we are at level 3, level 4, level 3.5 on the maturity scale on Industry 4.0. It actually guarantees them quite a few things. And once they come to the plant to see, they can see it for themselves, what we mean in terms of the automation, the information, the transparency, data flow, and the overall integrations.
All right. So there is actually a business benefit. And once you tell the story to the plant heads, you think they'll be on board, and it's going to be a win-win for everyone, right?
Right. I mean, it also brings in that little element of culture. So, from my experience, I would say the older plant, the older areas, the legacy ones, there's a lot more resistance to moving too fast, because they are embedded into a flow and a process. They're embedded into the number of people operating in that manner, and we're not a very. And I would say that it's probably a good trait of the management that they are quite positive towards employees. No one actually leaves this organization in a hurry. So I think that factor is also there. So we've got to balance it out. So I would say when you're pushing forward, some of the older things will have its life cycle. It will close, but the newer parts where the business is actually forging ahead, where the revenue is going to come from, where our newer set of customers who are going to be taking us to the next decade are coming in, we need to make sure that the baseline is actually set for what is required for the future, not what was done in the past.
Yes, that's quite a balancing act, and let's hope you can take most of your people along with you. So I'm trying to understand what are the technologies that you're utilizing in your smart factories, and what you plan to use in the upcoming factories. Are you using AR, VR, analytics, artificial intelligence? What are the kind of technologies you're using?
So it's interesting that you mentioned AR, VR, because that's one of the things that we introduced in the new factory. It's actually got multiple flavors. One, we started using it because there was a point of time when we could not have customers come in for inspections. Now, certain parts that we produce, like the aerospace and defense parts, and those are components that probably goes into guidance of missiles and stuff. And that's not a bulk production. Those are quantities are small, but it's high in tech, and the number of parts in there is very high. There were instances when the customer would be here, their defense personnel would be here, qualifying each one that is produced. So now you're not able to do that over the last year and a half in that manner. So do we stop production? Do they cancel the orders? No, we still have to continue. Now, how did we actually manage that? Was through deploying a lot of imagery, bringing in certain elements where they're able to feel as though they are in the plant and testing these items themselves. So that's where a little bit of AR, VR technology was used to help them inspect the sampling boards and then give them the confidence that, this is good enough to ship. And once you start with the first shipment, first inspection is passed, and they're able to see it in their site after it's received, and the quality is as they experience, it can become a process. Then suddenly you're looking at, well, we don't need to do this anymore. We can actually do these remote inspections, and these technologies are helping you examine every part. Some areas just need to be explored to 400x times magnification to actually look at any tiny little anomaly in it. So that is one area that we implemented. So we use it for two things. For new customers, we use this for remote plant tours, give them a view of the facility. That's for the prospective customers. For the existing customers, what we do is with these remote inspections. That's very important for us. And the third one is, now we are also trying to create these guides where new joiners are given training using this in certain parts. So you're able to actually now understand what goes into each board, what goes into each assembly, and what the assembly looks like. And it's actually fairly quick, because instead of days and days of training, in probably in an hour or so, they've got a fairly impressive idea of what needs to be done here. So that's one part. The other one is to do with data. The whole data analytics platform was very critical for us, because we had a lot of issues with not having, when you need end-to-end traceability, when you need to see exactly what is the last hour's production, and you need to pull in information from multiple stages of the production to come and say, okay, this is the output of the factory. That all needed to change, and that all is now changed with the newer factory. With the older factory, I still see, well, we need to go and see how we can help them, because some of the data flows are not coming through. Every machine is like sending you information. Now, how is the machine sending you information? We've got IoT plug in there. The sensors are collecting it. They're interfacing with our integration layer. Integration layer sends it back to the cockpit. ERP information is flowing in there. Production management, MES information is flowing in there. IoT information is flowing in there. And now we are able to get, I would say, I don't want to go oversell that again, but a near digital twin of what exactly is happening in the factories.
Okay, now all this sounds really impressive. But, the data crunching in the analytics, the IoT devices, the sensors, and of course, all the VR, AR platforms that you're running, you need capacity and infrastructure to run these. So is it all on the cloud? Do you have on-premise servers?
No,
how are you managing that?
Nice one. Good. So the thing is, the analytics platform right now, it is split between what is on-prem and what is on the cloud. Right now, when we try to integrate factories across all these sites, we need to move to the cloud full time. But at the moment, I would say that it's a hybrid. So we are kind of leveraging hybrid, and I would say for 2022 and 23, that shift to the cloud will become even more prominent. The reason we are stuck with partly on-prem is because some of the applications that we had, and the legacy, I wouldn't say legacy, the ERP application that we use is still on-prem. So that becomes a core component for us to integrate all these elements together. So the refresh, upgrade, replacement program is just underway. I don't want to reveal too much into that right now, but that becomes almost a centerpiece for how the rest of the hosting and infrastructure is going to be designed. So for us, the advantage that we found is using tools for the visualizations like the Tableaus and Power BIs. It works best if you're on the cloud, and not only the fact that the access is easier, but monitoring, because you're trying to support hybrid work. So not that, apart from the operators, the supervisory staff, or the client interfacing staff, or the program management staff, or the engineering team, whatever they want to see, you can actually see it from wherever you are, and whether it's home or different part of the office or another plant, and we're able to provide that. So the area that I want to still fine tune is the whole data management layer. I think it's something which was more or less an eye opener, because I would say we had a lot of dirty data, and this was creating issues in reporting. So a report like a shortage report, meaning a material shortage for production that's planned for the month, it was taken from five, six different perspectives. You could look at what is actually sitting in the warehouse. You could look at what is in the warehouse, but all available in the plant. You could look at, well, I got a PO in which is open, and that'll actually bring in deliveries within a week, 2 weeks, and multiple perspectives. So to actually create, previously people would take one report, draw a decision. But now we found that, even that actually has got so many areas.
Nuances, yes. And
so many
you
nuances.
need your intelligence, business intelligence also to come in.
Exactly. So this is where I'm seeing that AI is going to be helping us to make those right decisions, or arrive at those right decisions faster. Because otherwise you're leaving it to three different people, and these three people also don't agree on the same thing. So you might say, well, we might have to push that out, or we could pull this in, or right now we have excess capacity in the plant. Now how do we fill that? Because we got people idle, we got machines available. Why don't we just build something which is needed not now, but in the next window? So those are decisions that sometimes we look at, sometimes we didn't look at. But now I think this whole compute capability can only come from use of AI and ML.
Right. Prince, you did speak that you make components for sensitive industries like defense, aerospace, and health. Now, when you move so many of your processes to the cloud, you're also doing a lot of analytics on the cloud. Are there concerns about security? Because you did mention cybersecurity when you spoke about your software division, where your workers are working remotely, and how do you get enterprise level security in such an environment where the entry points are multiple? So, are there any concerns about security when using cloud extensively?
It'll be wrong to say there is no security. There's no concern on security, but I would say our security posture over the last 2 years have probably improved so much that we are at a position now where not only do we look at data protection, not only do we look at the fact that we have to data privacy management, but there's also something called IP protection, which we didn't really look at in a conscious level earlier. Now we've devised a policy for intellectual property protection. Now there's steps being taken to ensure that any data that is actually coming into our network via any means, there is a classification done. Based on the classification, we apply the steps and policies on top of that, so that the data propagation happens in a manner that is permissible. Not only that, we are able to account, we are able to get logs, trails, and this is something we are happy to share with the customer as well, so that he is completely at ease on what is happening, and that at any sensitive, not just sensitive, any confidential, highly secretive design that they might have is actually safe in our hands. So the layers of security that we have put in is quite. I think the biggest investment over the last one of the biggest investments has been on enterprise security, because we just didn't want to compromise on any layer, network, edge, everything in between, encryptions, authentication. Even on the data center side, what we have done is we made sure that there's at least 6 levels to go through before you actually access the server in the server room. So those are improvements that we had not thought about pre-COVID in the same level of seriousness.
All right, that's very heartening to hear, Prince. Now, you've already mentioned something about your ERP program, and a revamp, you said, is in the works. What are the other projects that you're planning for 2022? Could you tell us what is the immediate focus, and what are the things that you want to launch ASAP?
So there are 5 projects or 5 themes that I still try to look at. The first one is our smart factory operations, or the smart factory vision. That continues, because smart factory actually now, beyond the factory, you need to have smart finance, smart supply chain, smart HR, smart IT, smart operations. So that focus is still a priority, but wherever we have an opportunity, we try to leverage and bring in an improvement and innovation there. The second one is all on the data analytics side, because the actionable insights and gathering that through the deployment of AI and ML is something which we want to get a little bit more mature in. So that's the second track that I want to look at. The third one is we have already deployed some parts of IoT sensors. Now the IoT part will go into a little bit more maturity because we've got that proven in one site. We want to scale it out into the other plants as well, because that's giving us a lot of real quick wins. The fourth one is on the cloud and the whole collaboration platform, because I think, as I mentioned earlier, our footprint on the cloud is increasing slowly, but I'm expecting that over the course of the next 18 months, we will be probably mostly on the cloud itself. And the fifth one is 5G. I think it's just been announced that 5G is going to be available next year in many parts. So I just want to see how we can leverage that for enterprise. We've also seen certain factories where we're able to use it internally, only within the premises. So we need to try and see how we can leverage that. So these are the areas that we are kind of focusing on. But there are many others, but I would say these are the top 5.
Great. Prince, as per you, what do you think are the top technologies that IT heads around the world and in our country should focus on in 2022? You have your laundry list ready. What, according to you, are go-to technologies or must-have technologies in your case?
The 3 that I would say that from a technology perspective, or it is more like a technology area perspective, AI/ML is something which is definitely going to be helping people who are already at a level of maturity, and it can help them to really take a leap into the next era. The second one is cybersecurity is an area where, again, AI/ML can play a bigger role than what we're using it now. And that can really aid not only in providing you security assurance and mitigation steps, but also confidence to our customers. And the third one is, and probably the most important one, would be data. Anything to do with data at the moment, because we are getting into a point where we are going to collect more and more data. Then working on making those to be prepared and analyzed and giving you the right sort of insights, the layers that you deploy, that is going to be an area where you need to get a little bit more better, because many of these things you can't just buy off the block. You buy a solution, you plug it. So there's a need for integrating this into the business context, into the use case it adds value.
All right. Friends, thank you so much for sparing the time to talk to us. It was really enlightening to understand how a smart factory works and what your plans are in the years ahead. All the very best to you, and thank you so much for speaking.
Thank you for having me.
We'll wrap up this episode where we were in conversation with Prince. We'll be back with another interview. Stay tuned to CIO Team.